People get oddly sentimental about certain brands that they've known since they were kids.
I'm joined by Linus Bowman, YouTube's greatest design communicator, and we're going to dissect the most significant, interesting, and controversial rebrands of 2023. This document is by far the wildest I've ever seen.
The most ass-hatted thing I've seen in branding.
To sort the grand from the bland and find out if any brand lost more integrity this year than Russell. Of these, which is the worst? Do we have to say that it's Twitter?
Now, I'm gonna try my first Pepsi.
To be cool and be somewhat respectable, pick up Pepsi in these hype receptacles.
Pepsi has had a massive brand refresh.
I'd say it's pretty monumental.
The new birth of Pepsi.
Pepsi seems to be part of a larger trend that we've seen for a couple of years, which is to kind of go back to the heritage of a brand and kind of bring back some of the older elements. And I think they've done it pretty successfully. What we're really going to miss in the new rebranded Pepsi world we now live in is the amazing construction grid of the old Pepsi logo.
That will certainly be missed. So you mentioned the breathtaking document.
I think it was leaked, apparently.
Leaked.
And there's some question about if it was just a very committed satire.
I don't think satire can be written as cleverly as this. There is references to like the magnetic fields of the earth.
This is some S-tier kind of brand bullshit, if I may say so.
This document is by far the wildest I've ever seen. Like you said, it borders on satire.
Yeah, I think that especially these construction grids, questionable at the best of times, but, bringing in the golden ratio and the Venus in retrograde and all of these things, it's a whole other level.
Yeah, but we start with the golden ratio, but now we've got the Pepsi ratio. It just seems like loads of circles. Again, drawn on top of one another, rotated at the whim of the designer, and then I think justified afterwards.
Here, especially this page, it just reminds me that this logo is just an automaton.
It's the face of a new generation.
That is the face of a new generation.
I mean, we can safely agree, well, maybe we can't, but I think that last logo is just atrocious. It's the distortion of that Pepsi globe is, I think, what they call it. They've made it so much more unappealing. Like, all of those curves are not satisfying at all.
No.
I do think this one's a clear improvement. Like, they didn't need to try too hard, so I do think it is. I won't be the first to say it looks a little bit like a sort of, petroleum company.
Yeah, it definitely has some, petro state vibes or something.
They use this truck imagery in the reveal, and it looks so ominous. Like, what's this, delivering this cyber fuel?
Yes, it's a Decepticon. I'm not sure if the new typography is like a huge improvement. I mean, it does look a little like Dead Sea. And a lot of the brands we're going to look at actually have gone to a very kind of boring typography. So I'd rather see this a little bit, questionable, but trying something different than just another boring sans serif.
Absolutely. Love big swings here. I think it's a step in the right direction.
When you're hot and thirsty, how about something good and cold? How about Slurpee?
Reach for the cold one. Slurpee is the cold one.
Who doesn't love a sugary syrup slushy? That's pretty universally appealing, except to dentists.
Dentists are getting it on the back end, believe me.
That's true.
This man is a dentist.
And it's kind of that kind of got me actually. Is like, how do you market sugar water when everyone's going to like reduced sugar and stuff? It's an interesting one. They've gone with almost this skeuomorphic logo. It kind of resembles the product itself, which is a fun touch, I think.
Yeah, I really like the new type. When I first saw this, I thought they don't need to change their branding. That still looks fresh and new and, I guess, sweet and slushy. But I think they've done a good job. Like, you rarely see, I guess, brands this big with such, like, sort of bubbly, round shapes. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's almost like they almost look like the character designs out of like a show like Adventure Time. It's very distorted proportions in the typography.
Like throughout their history, they've gone through a lot of changes, and I think all of them seem like improvements. Like most rebrands, I guess, are rarely needed.
There's a sliding scale on whether it's justified by logic or business logic. But this one, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think in execution it works well. It's bright, it's colorful.
It's very Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I guess.
They're using the S as a mascot. Some people claim it resembles the poop emoji.
I mean, people's minds go to dirty places.
Yeah, people are trying to find, okay, how can we make this absolutely filthy? Merch-wise, I think they go the hardest. This looks like not lower tier YouTube merch. This is YouTuber who's made it enough to hire a designer.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say actually it's a cut above most YouTuber merch. Apparently, these ones are available for sale. Like 7-Eleven has like its own merch store online, and these hot drops you can get in on. On that note, I kind of want to talk about the competition, Slush Puppy.
Ice cold slush puppy, drinking it up. Slush puppy is coming in hot.
This brand definitely not as hip as Slurpee at all. I can see lobster in the rebrand.
Oh,
really strong, 2012 vibes when you see that font. It's definitely feeling more like targeted towards an 8-year-old, and the other ones, Slurpee's targeted more to like someone who's like 15. There's actually another website for the Australian Slush Puppy, and they have pivoted the other way.
okay, the natural choice.
Yeah, learn more.
Got Hobo STD as the font there, I believe. Okay. Cloudy lemon, forest fruit, sour apples.
They've like pivoted hard towards like putting this in, swim centers and places where like class loads of kids will go, and are claiming this is 99% apple juice.
Okay, I mean...
I don't know if this is working for them from a branding standpoint.
This looks like green algae. But hey, that's a hard thing to convince someone of. It might be apple juice, but I don't think... it's still going to have so much sugar, right?
You got to really lean in on that term natural that's not regulated to mean anything. And kind of not talk about the coloring agents you're using to get that palette.
The colors of nature.
I wish them all the luck in the future.
Every month, there's a flavor of the month at participating Slush Puppy stores.
My apologies, but love it.
So Eddie Bauer, they've gone and had big old rebrand. And I think this is another example in, I guess, fashion brands. If they count as a fashion brand, moving towards just the blandness of sans serif type. At least this one's got a goose though. What do you think?
There was definitely a meme going around a few years ago about this, like oversimplified logos. It was called reblanding. It's a bit of a left field shift, and it's not necessarily the best goose in logo design. I'm not saying it's like a Grey Goose, vodka level goose.
They've forgone the sort of cursive script. Do you think that's just because the Fortnite generation can't read joined up writing? Is there any justification for that?
This is like one of the more ridiculous takes that we're seeing is people saying, oh, kids can't read cursive, let's destroy anything that's handwritten. Although it seems to be just like a trend people are jumping on. I don't know about you, Ben. I don't really hand write a lot of notes anymore, compared to the amount of writing I do on screens. So it kind of makes sense that kids don't use cursive, and maybe they can't read it, but that's not really what a logo is for. Like, you don't kind of stop and read a logo when it's like a signature.
All this lays the foundation for a branding strategy.
Cry baby, mommy's here.
Johnson & Johnson.
I want to be
Your touch and Johnson & Johnson, the language of love.
We are Johnson & Johnson.
Now I hate this.
I think for a corporate logo for a huge kind of medical industry company, it's fine. It's not bad on its own, but in terms of losing the heritage of a brand that was in continuous use for 100 and something years, it is a little bit sad to see it replaced with something so generic.
Because this just looks so corporate, right? One of the explanations for their logo is a little bit, I'm not going to say on the nose here, it says, the new logo is modernized for this next chapter. Each letter is drawn in one pen stroke, creating a contrast that delivers both a sense of unexpectedness and humanity. I'm not sure I get that from this font. I don't know. It kind of just looks like, I think to most people, just like a default font that they've typed out and put it in red and like the default 100% red here. Like the ampersand is different, and there are some, I guess, interesting sort of angles on the J's. I'm not sure. I think they're overselling it a little there.
This is like not particularly unique in overselling. The typeface is fine, a little bit flavorless, especially compared with the original. But like the S's, if you look kind of close to them, they're kind of quite flared terminals for a sans serif. It's kind of like the skim milk of the Johnson & Johnson logo. There's like, 5% of the flavor of the original, and the rest is just like reblanding water.
TaiPei. Discover good fortune.
You suggested we include the rebrand for TaiPei.
Yeah, so this one is probably not like the world's most famous brand, but I thought it was interesting to include because I've covered the topic specifically of chop suey fonts in a past video. Chop suey lettering is kind of an outdated style that's very, exoticized, and we try not to do that anymore. And this is kind of a nice example of a transition away from that. It's still very much a theme park, Asian food branding, but it's dropped that exotic typeface.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an improvement, definitely a step in the right direction, moving away from that typeface. I think they've done a pretty good job because I think they've changed almost everything except like this stock photo on this packaging. But it still looks pretty much the same. I think they've done a good job of refreshing it while still, keeping it identifiable.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly a remarkable refresh. They've managed to keep the brand recognizable while still kind of dropping some of the more outdated parts of the branding, which I think is like less flashy and newsworthy. But it's not a bad thing. It's probably a positive thing.
It's a bursting with the flavor. Juicy tomatoes, basil, Dolmio bolognese.
A text.
Text? How come nobody talking no more?
Think about the flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Go Jeff. Go Jeff. Go.
Jeff?
Dolmio, yeah.
All right, so Dolmio has rebranded Linus. What do you think of this?
Dolmio is one of those brands that I feel like strangely attached to, and it's never been like a high class brand. It's always, it's like ready to use pasta sauce.
We put the good things in, so you'll wear the Dolmio grin.
This is starting to feel more like a pizza company to me. Yeah, it's like Netflix, if it was a pizza company, is now Dolmio. I think this is kind of trying too hard, but I'm looking at it with clouded judgment of unwarranted nostalgia for the crappy old brand.
I can't get past them using an exclamation mark here in the middle of the word. Like, I think I'm looking at it. I know what it's meant to say, and it still looks like Dolmo. To me, like if that dot was not red, if it was white, maybe, or if they could just put the exclamation mark at the end if they want that excitement. I guess, I know it's just so tantalizing to want to put it in the middle to replace the I, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it works that well. Everything else I think is fine for what they're doing here, but yeah, I don't like what they've done with that exclamation mark.
There's a few logos that sometimes use the exclamation mark in ways. I mean, Yahoo in the 90s was one. It's definitely gives you some try-hard points for putting the exclamation mark in your logo.
When is your Dolmio Day?
Today is the most important day in Patreon's 10-year history as a company.
Linus, they've updated Patreon. I am a Patreon, not a Patreon creator, but a frequent Patreon user. I know you have a Patreon as well, so a reminder to everyone, support our good friend Linus over on Patreon.
Thank you very much for the plug. This is one of those classic case examples where the deck has lots of pretty examples and fanciful scenarios of the brand, when in reality, the amount of interaction we do with Patreon is mostly on that one page, logo in the corner, in the most basic form. This approach is not like unique. We've suddenly had like MTV was probably the first to do this kind of style of one kind of skeleton of the logo and then 100 different art styles that you can play with it in. And it kind of makes sense for this like idea conveying the breadth of the creator economy that Patreon is part of.
I think I would agree on most points. I do have a pitch though. A pitch to Jack Conte, so CEO of Patreon and YouTuber. Here's my suggestion. I think build a customized sort of Patreon, maybe end card for a video or just an animation where creators can go in and maybe tweak a few sliders, change the texture, change the color, upload an image, a background of their face or whatever, their logo, doing some weird thing in that Patreon. I think they're calling it a spodge, that logo shape. I think creators would use that a lot.
I really like your pitch, Ben. Actually, I would go one further and say, Jack, give us a patron thank you scroll builder so that we don't have to all do it individually. That can be branded with all kinds of weird, like cool Patreon brand identity stuff. We would use it. Like none of us really enjoy manually making those. So yeah, that's a killer idea.
We need to think bigger in terms of your global branding.
Elon Musk bought Twitter.
X, formerly Twitter.
I think it's just dying right now.
Beginning to think you're some kind of branding genius.
Twitter is an accelerant to X.
What does that mean?
You know, if Jesus is saving people, I mean, I wouldn't stand in his way.
Now, we don't have any fancy documents or sort of reveal for this new rebranding because they did it, I guess, overnight. Elon put out a tweet that says, if a good enough X logo is posted tonight, we'll make it go live worldwide tomorrow. And they did. They changed it. This is a kind of cowboy rebranding we don't see much. What do you think about it, Linus?
I'd say this is probably the most ass-hatted thing I've seen in branding in my career/lifetime. Yeah, I mean, the fact that everyone is still calling it Twitter kind of speaks to the success of this rebranding. And just what a colossal waste of a good brand this is. Like, we talked a little bit about like brand equity, and this is a term that people use, and that's like how recognizable, you know, is your brand? How much do people feel something about it? And Twitter had that in spades, and X, not only like an SEO dumpster fire, not only just I'm trying to think of a single good thing about this, and kind of coming up with a big, you know, X, nothing.
I feel completely the same. The mind boggles as to what was going on here. Like, there's not even much to say about the actual branding. Like, it's an X. People like use the word tweet. Like, everyone knows what Twitter is. Brands would kill for that kind of sort of recognition. Like the color of the bird, all of those things were so identified with the brand. It's wild that you would throw that all away. I did a video about the X logo. I did a fair bit of research, and at the time they said the brand equity lost somewhere between, I think it was $4 and $20 billion. I mean, to Elon, that might not be much, but that's like ridiculous, a ridiculous amount of money. And you mentioned that people still call it Twitter. If we look at their brand toolkit, you'll notice it is on the website about.twitter.com. So do you think it stays like this? Does he get kicked out and they overturn it? What happens? What happens,
I think
Linus?
If you say nothing else about Elon, he has contributed amazing case study to branding textbooks for the next century, I think, with this one. I don't think that we're going to see a move of this caliber, cowboy caliber again in the next century. There's a saying in design that you need to know the rules in order to break them. And I think like Elon may not even be aware of the concept of rules. When it comes to branding.
Of these, which is the worst? Do we have to say that it's Twitter?
Yeah.
A huge thanks to Linus for joining us. He seriously makes the most insightful videos about graphic design on YouTube. If you haven't seen any of his videos before, he is one of my favorites. And a special thanks to Armin Vit, who runs Brand New. Brand New does an annual roundup of the best, worst, and most interesting rebrands of the year, so you should definitely check that out. It is behind a membership paywall, but they offer free access to anyone who can't afford the subscription, no questions asked.